The Black Mesa incident ends. It may have been brief, but it has already set into motion events as a consequence that humanity will neither foresee nor be prepared for. Welcome to Between Two Games, a video chronicling everything that happened between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. The conflicts, invasions, the struggles, and ultimately, humanity's descent into the darkness of Combine occupation. I'm the Loch Ness Mobster. And again, this whole series is ripping off Time Ghosts, so go watch them. They need as many views as they can, because YouTube algorithm is hungry for blood these days. Fortunately, I am safe in these videos because I am not monetized. But I could use more subscribers, so subscribe. Now, where to start? Well, let's define all that happened between the two games. In Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Dr. Kleiner, over the Breencast, made a reference to there being more hope now than at any time in the past decade, implying that the 7-hour war happened 10 years before Half-Life 2. But we also know that Half-Life 2 takes place 20 years after Half-Life 1. So we have everything between 2000X and about 2010X, X-teen, when the 7-hour war takes place, and then everything between the 7-hour war and Half-Life 2. Now, of course, this is kind of speculation, since what Kleiner was saying was probably just a throwaway line, but there is one more piece of information that I think confirms this, but I'm going to have to talk about that later when that event actually happens. Now, I have to get another more controversial theory shoehorned in here. You see, if this is correct, then that whole 10 years worth of information that we know next to nothing about between Black Mesa and the 7-hour war, unless you watch my last video, there's not much we know. But if you did see my last theory, then you'd know that it is very likely that 10 Cloverfield Lane, Left 4 Dead, and Counter-Strike all take place within that 10-year time frame. Now, of course, normally this would cause a lot of controversy for me to pretend that this is canon, even though that it's a theory. But I mean, I didn't really receive very much feedback on the last video saying that it was wrong. In fact, the most impassioned comment I got was something along the lines of how J.J. Abrams is a terrible director, which I don't really agree with, but that's a topic for another video. So, in the wise words of Todd Howard, it just works. But hey, if the theory gets proven wrong or enough people backlash against this video, then by sectioning it off like this, I can easily just go back in the YouTube editor and delete that part, so it just works. So this is where the speculation begins. Yep, right there. Perhaps it was the Black Mesa incident that caused the huge uptake in terrorism in the world we see in Counter-Strike. I mean, an uptake in terrorism kind of makes sense if you learn that your government committed genocide and unleashed an alien invasion upon your world without you even knowing. Hell, George Bush may not even get a second term in the Half-Life universe. I mean, Black Mesa is basically Hurricane Katrina times Lambda. Oh, and speaking of Counter-Strike, I'm going to say that Counter-Strike Global Offensive is the canon one, since it's the newest and the most visually similar to Left 4 Dead. Now, all this unrest is, of course, a result of the several people who escaped the Black Mesa incident but were not taken by the G-Man, being Dr. Isaac Kleiner, Dr. Eli Vance, Alex Vance, Barney Calhoun, Dr. Rosenberg, Dr. Walter Bennett, Dr. Simmons, and Dr. Wallace Breen, and Dr. Arne Magnuson. It's never stated if they got pardoned or not, but it's quite possible that either way, many of them went into exile. Kleiner, the Vances, Magnuson, and Calhoun would end up in Belgrade, Serbia. The remaining survivors' fates are all kinda unknown. Well, except Breen, but we'll get to him. So generally, Earth is in kind of a state of unrest after Black Mesa, but what about the affairs of all the various aliens that we fought in that game? Well, Zen, immediately after the Black Mesa incident, now leaderless because the Nihilanth is dead, now finds its Vortigaunt slaves all freed. This probably led to a period of civil war in Zen between the Vortigaunts and what's left of the Nihilanth's military of controllers and grunts. Given they're never seen again, the Vortigaunts were probably victorious in this, but this wouldn't necessarily be a happy state of affairs for long, as although this has never been confirmed, but it is generally assumed / agreed on by the community that what followed after was an invasion of Zen by the Combine Empire. Without the Nihilanthe there and his powerful forces, the Combine would have a much easier conquest. However, easy is kind of relative, because it must have taken around 10 years before they moved on to invade Earth. So it's possible that Zen was a really difficult target for even the Combine. The Vorts are not to be messed with. In mass numbers, with their power, they are a force to be reckoned with. But wait, we are still missing one group. What about Race X? Well, again, they're never seen again. The defeat of the Gene Worm and the destruction of Black Mesa completely obliterated their invasion plans for Earth. Although that was the last time we saw them in Half-Life, that is not the last time we saw them, period. Because in the game Borderlands, another Gene Worm is seen as the final boss, known as the Destroyer, which had been imprisoned in a vault on the planet Pandora. It is quickly defeated. Now, it's not actually confirmed to be Race X, but it's literally a giant worm that looks just like the Gene Worm and comes out of a purple portal. If it is of Race X origin, then that means that Race X probably did survive the catastrophe at Black Mesa, and are probably still out there trying to invade other parallel universes and dimensions, ironically making them the ones who got off the best after Black Mesa. So fast forward near to the 7-hour wartime frame. By now, though it has basically been their Vietnam, the Combine have finally gained control of Zen, and have re-enslaved the Vortigaunts, and begun also using the headcrabs found there for shells, even genetically engineering some into fast and poison variants, as Valvetime theorized. They soon begin making preparations for their invasion of Earth. The green flu is their weapon of choice here. Now, I have to be careful what I say here, because there is some conflicting information as a result of all these universe connections that are still kind of theoretical. In the game Payday the Heist, there's a DLC mission in which the Payday crew steal the original samples of the green flu to be sold to an unknown entity. Now, I haven't mentioned it yet because since the last video I have learned that said mission is confirmed to not be canon to the Left 4 Dead universe, but there still may be some truth in it regardless. Before our knowing of the connection to Half-Life through Cloverfield, it was theorized that the mysterious entity that the Payday gang were working with were none other than the terrorists from Counter-Strike, who released the virus on the populace in the first place. We also see in 10 Cloverfield Lane that Combine-looking ships are releasing the green flu in a gaseous form. These may seem like two conflicting sources of the green flu, but in the comics of Left 4 Dead, it is stated that the green flu spread both as an airborne infection and as a regular pathogen. Perhaps the Combine orchestrated the whole unleashing of the virus by the terrorists, and also unleashed the airborne version using their synth aircraft. These initial teleports were witnessed by Howard Stambler in 10 Cloverfield Lane, describing it as a bright flash in the sky. After his doomsday bunker mate Michelle was forced to kill him, she escapes and is attacked by Combine craft, and overhears a radio broadcast mentioning survivors at Mercy Hospital, implying the ending stages of Left 4 Dead's campaign No Mercy are happening simultaneously. In the coming weeks, those survivors make it down south to Georgia to escape by sailboat, and pass the torch to the Left 4 Dead 2 cast, who escape across the Mississippi River in New Orleans. CETA, the US-based military and science force working to stop the spread of the virus, haven't quite been able to do that, but they were basically able to contain it to the eastern United States, with the Mississippi River acting as a natural barrier to infection. Also, I want to say, I think CETA might actually be kind of the successor to HECU after they all got slaughtered in Half-Life 1. I mean, they do end up murdering a bunch of people trying to escape in New Orleans, as seen in Left 4 Dead 2's final campaign. The Combine, however, begin releasing more green flu on the western side, however, in both the fields of Louisiana and even as far as Houston, Texas, where Michelle travels to. The green flu has spread quickly and wiped out at least half of Earth's most powerful country, making it much easier for a swift Combine invasion. The portal storms would begin soon after, followed by the 7-hour war, in which the world had no chance. Earth's surrender is negotiated by Black Mesa's former administrator, Dr. Wallace Breen, who is given oversight of the Combine's occupation of Earth. Also, as a part of Breen's terms of surrender, a version of his consciousness is saved at that very moment to be uploaded into a host Sha'ulathoi, or Combine advisor body, in the case of his death. Into Earth's remaining urban centers are teleported massive Combine towers called citadels for Combine forces to operate from. Breen chooses the citadel in Belgrade, Serbia, now dubbed City 17 as his capital, and the former parliament building of Serbia has as the nexus for what he calls the Combine Overwatch. The Overwatch is another product of Breen's negotiation for surrender, as the Combine desire the conversion of species they conquer into synthetic soldiers and weapons of war, and the Overwatch are Breen's proposal for how humans' conversion, known as transhumanity, will look like. Normal humans are reduced to slaves and treated as such by both the system and the non-transhuman Combine Civil Protection Wing, who bully them into volunteering for the transhumanity program. Those who volunteer, or are selected at random, are sent to Combine facilities meant to upgrade them into soldiers. In City 17's case, this facility is known as Nova Prospect. Those who refuse or otherwise defy the Combine are sent to be upgraded instead into mindless slaves known as stalkers. Further control methods are introduced to humanity, such as the suppression field, which bans certain protein chains that are required for human reproduction to form, keeping the whole population sterile until they are completely institutionalized, as Breen implies in his Breencasts. As for the fate of the green flu, it is unclear. Given how everyone in Belgrade, Serbia speaks American English, it's possible that the survivors of the green flu in America were taken to City 17 or Europe, leaving zombies to roam freely until death in America, perhaps being a quarantine area. The Combine find it more controllable, yet equally deadly strategy to just use head crabs to reduce and disrupt the populations of humans still resisting their reign. Speaking of, these groups of resistance do spur up, especially around the Combine's capital city in City 17, led by former Black Mesa personnel such as Eli Vance, Isaac Kleiner, and Arne Magnusson. Though she never worked for Black Mesa, Dr. Judith Mossman also works for the Resistance, but was in fact a triple agent working for both the Resistance and the Combine for the ultimate benefit of the Resistance in the end, as stated in Epistle 3, all at the direction of Eli Vance. The Resistance activities breeds what comes to be known as the Underground Railroad, a massive network to break defectors out of City 17 through canals, tunnels, sewers, and ultimately the river, either the Danube or Sava River, destination being Black Mesa East, the Resistance's base of operations, and the refuge mining town of Ravenholm. The Resistance plan would be to gradually build and consolidate their forces, and with their Vortigaunt allies, and produce new technology to combat the Combine. The Resistance set up several outposts and bases along the coasts of City 17, and also into the Outlands, where they take control of an old communist-era nuclear missile silo known as White Forest. The White Forest base is headed by Dr. Arne Magnusson, and with its sights set on launching a rocket to tap into Black Mesa's old, now defunct satellite array, including the Omega satellite launched at the height of the Black Mesa incident by Gordon Freeman in Half-Life 1. The ultimate goal is that if the Combine can be overthrown, they can use the array to close the rift between Earth and the Combine overworld, using the same resonance reversal strategy used during the Black Mesa incident. Before continuing with the Resistance, I must cover one last major faction from the Half-Life 1 era, Aperture Science. For the first 10 years after the Black Mesa incident, Aperture was under the control of the rogue AI, the genetic lifeform and disk operating system, GLaDOS, as she killed the whole staff and begun a permanent cycle of testing just before the incident. The young girl Chell is present at the Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, in fact being one of the little girls who created a potato battery scene in Portal 2. If she was a little girl at the time of the genocide, and we see her fully grown in Portal, then we know it takes place during the Combine's occupation. Then that's more evidence that it takes place 10 years after, or even more after the Half-Life 1 timeframe. Anyways, Shell, like other survivors, were placed into extended relaxation. A surviving scientist, Doug Ratman, moves her to the top of the list of test subjects due to her tenacity, hoping that she can bring down GLaDOS. His faith is well placed, as after almost being killed, she escapes into Aperture's maintenance corridor, finds GLaDOS, and kills her. She is unfortunately dragged back into the facility by a still functioning party escort bot to be placed back into extended relaxation and to heal from her wounds from GLaDOS exploding. Doug Ratman tries to free her, but can only manage to make sure she doesn't die in the relaxation vault when reserve power runs out, as the facility's power infrastructure is damaged. Ratman will end up joining Chell in extended relaxation, but either dies of his own wounds or ends up with her several decades or centuries in the future. In the ending battle, GLaDOS also makes reference to the Combine on the surface, meaning she has Aperture concealed underground from their control. She also says that the facility will be unsafe without her alive, but that turns out to not be the case. Back with the Resistance, I have a theory about them. A game theory. No. It involves the aforementioned triple agent Judith Mossman. The Combine, though powerful, lack one important technology: local teleportation. They can teleport between universes, but not between 2 points in the same universe. The Resistance has been developing this very technology, using the Zen Relay method first created by Dr. Rosenberg and Barney Calhoun during the Black Mesa incident. My theory is, did the Combine know about it? Well, we all know that they did, but what if, as a part of Judith's mission under Eli's direction, was to play the Combine in such a way that even though the Combine were aware of the Resistance, their activities, and the Underground Railroad, that Breen would intentionally turn a blind eye to it all, to intentionally allow the Resistance to create the Zen Relay for him, and once complete, the Combine would attack and seize the technology for themselves. But the strategy would actually be to purposefully make them think that they were working on the technology, but continue working on it indefinitely to keep the Combine off their back forever, so that they could consolidate their forces and do their whole strategy I already mentioned. I don't know if it's true, but it's certainly compatible with everything we've seen in the games. Though not too long before the events of Half-Life 2, the Resistance stronghold of Ravenholm is shelled by Combine headcrab shells, turning most of the inhabitants into zombies. Could this have been a show of force to make sure that the Resistance was keeping its promise? I'll let you decide for yourself. Tomorrow, Gordon Freeman will be pulled out of stasis by the G-Man to be the savior of the Resistance, so we'll see all that tomorrow. This has been Between Two Games. I'll see you for the beginning of the Battle of City 17.